Yeah, it's I love the title, which I don't know that we've actually said yet, which is "Vibe Coding Kills Open Source," which is quite provocative when you think about it. And all the components of the title are provocative. I mean, vibe coding. There's been all sorts of commentary for and against, and trying to understand it. With open source being very foundational to software coding for the last 3 decades at least, and most commercial packages having various open source components to it. But that is part of a conversation that I know I've certainly had with other people, in terms of at this point with these tools, especially you mentioned Claude Code, and I know that's probably the most popular coding tool recently. I certainly use it, and with Opus 4.5 that came out in November, that really kicked off a lot of innovation. So I think a lot of us that do code ourselves are wondering why, I can just go do exactly what I want, or I can take existing software and make alterations and stuff. How should we be thinking about open source in this new paradigm of vibe coding, or it's becoming kind of a prompt engineering for software engineering, whatever you want to call it. There's a bunch of names coming out now.
Yeah. So I think, and we got a little bit of heat because of the title. I think
I'm sure
academia is quite conservative, and this sounds like a clickbaity title, but to this my reply is that it's not clickbait if it's true. But of course, let me explain why we think that it's true. And we thought about every word we discussed in detail, like is this the correct word to use in the title? And I agree with that sentiment. Vibe coding has this negative connotation, but that's the word that people use. So let's just
absolutely
let's just stick with that. And so the way we approach the problem, there's at least at the time there was very little data. Now we have more data, and we have done some new empirical analysis as well, looking at data. But at the time, we were just thinking, like, how would an economist approach this problem? And the way I think about economics, and this may not be the canonical undergraduate economics textbook, but that's what I kind of think that the three main pillars of economics are. One is that people respond to incentives. So whether it's monetary incentives, so they want to make a good wage, but it might be other incentives as well. So in open source, it's typically not, at least not directly, some payment. It could be kudos, if you like, that it's good to fame, or it may just be like a good feeling of solving other people's problems and sharing your solution with others. And that's also, you feel good about yourself and feel good about helping out others. That's also an incentive. So economics can also talk about that. It doesn't have to be money that's involved. The second pillar, I would say, is that the economy is a closed system. So if you take away something here, you have to basically make sure that things add up. So I think when it comes to AI, one thing that is a very scarce resource, I think, is human attention. So this idea that AI is going to take over everything and it's just going to infinitely produce stuff, including software. I mean, it's getting better and better of doing that. Longer and longer runs for AI agents, but ultimately there has to be a human who instructs the AI and who reviews the result, and so there is this attention. There is a very limited resource. So if you turn this towards AI, you have to take it away from something else. And then the third pillar, I would say, is how these two things come together. So if something is scarce, there's very few of it in the economy, then the price of it has to go up so that people can adjust. And so this kind of system thinking in economics actually helps us think about the open source ecosystem as well, because here I think just looking at individual data sets, or there are a lot of surveys about how people use AI. There are surveys about how software engineers use AI. But these are limited. Even if you do this on tens of thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people, they don't necessarily capture the entire system of engineers and users and how they interact.